Udinti Casa de Marina, Manhan. Marina wakes up with a metallic taste in her mouth and the familiar sound of birds chirping in the backyard of the house where she grew up. The digital clock reads 6:47 a.m., but she knows she won't go back to sleep. For 3 weeks, her mornings have started like this, with that strange feeling that something is about to happen, as if the air around her skin were electrically charged. She gets up slowly, feeling the cold wooden floor on her bare feet, and walks to the window. The town of Clear Creek seems asleep under the morning mist that forms over the distant hills. Marina is 32 years old and returned to her hometown. 2 months ago, after her mother Celia died in a car accident. The house is now hers, but she can't feel at home. Every room holds memories she'd rather forget. Every piece of furniture whispers secrets she'd rather not hear. The kitchen still smells of the sweet perfume her mother used, even after weeks of airing out the rooms. It's as if Celia refuses to leave completely. She makes coffee, watching the bubbles form on the dark surface of the liquid. The morning ritual is an anchor, something concrete amidst the emotional chaos her life has become. She quit her job in Chicago, sold her apartment, and broke off a 4-year engagement. All to return to this place she swore she'd never set foot in again. But Celia's death brought with it a disturbing discovery. Among her mother's papers, she found a letter addressed to her, sealed, with the instruction to be opened only when Marina is ready for the truth. The letter remains untouched on the living room table for 8 weeks. Marina takes her cup of coffee and walks into the living room, stopping in front of the coffee table where the letter stares at her every day. The envelope is thick, yellowed with age, and her mother's recognizable handwriting trembles at the edges of the letters. Marina, the truth about Mount Promise. The name of the religious community where she spent her first 7 years of life always causes a tightness in her chest, as if someone were squeezing her ribs from the inside. She remembers fragments of that time, singing in a circle, adults, dressed in white, the smell of incense mixed with damp earth, and especially Clara, her best friend. Clara was the same age as her, with curly hair and a smile that lit up any room. They played together, shared secrets, slept side by side during spiritual retreats that lasted days, until one day Clara and her mother Rosanna simply disappeared. Marina vaguely remembers adults whispering, searches in the woods, her own mother crying silently as she packed their things to leave as well. Maybe it's exactly what you need. You came back to Clear Creek, left your whole life in Chicago. Why? Because some part of you knows you need to close this wound. After they hang up, Marina sits in silence for long minutes. The house around her seems to pulse with its own life. The ticking of the wall clock, the groaning of the wood settling, the whisper of the wind in the curtains. Finally, with trembling hands, she tears open the seal of the letter. The paper is thin, almost transparent, and her mother's handwriting seems more urgent than usual. My dearest Marina, if you are reading this, I am gone, and the time has come for you to know the truth about our escape from Mount Promise. I hoped I could tell you in person, but the time never seemed right. You were always too sensitive, and I wanted to protect you from the pain this truth carries. Clara and Rosanna didn't disappear by accident. They were murdered. The leader of the community, Jonas Duarte, discovered that Rosanna was secretly questioning some of the more extreme rituals. She had been seeking me out, saying she was afraid of what might happen to Clara. Jonas practiced rituals that went far beyond faith. They were rituals of control, of punishment, of purification through pain. Rosanna tried to escape with Clara, but they were captured in the woods. I saw, Marina, I saw what he did to them that night in 1984, and I did nothing to stop it. Jonas threatened me. He said that if I told anyone, you would be next. So I ran away like a coward, leaving the bodies of Rosanna and Clara behind. They were buried somewhere in the woods, along with the secrets of the cult, but there's something more. Jonas didn't die as everyone thinks. He disappeared in 1991, shortly after the community was officially dissolved. Some people in the area say he's still alive, living as a hermit in the mountains. Some say he still practices the old rituals, waiting for the right moment to return. Marina, I know this is terrible news, but you need to be prepared. In the weeks before she died, Mom received strange letters with no return address, bearing symbols I recognized from Mount Promise. Someone knows we're alive. Someone knows where we are. If anything happens to me, find Antonio Silva, the mechanic in West Star. He has something that can help you understand what really happened. And Marina, please be careful. The past has a way of finding us when we least expect it. With all my love and regret, Celia Marina dropped the letter, her hands shaking violently. Coffee spilled onto her nightgown, but she didn't notice. Clara was dead. Her childhood best friend, the girl who laughed with her during playtime, who slept beside her on cold nights in the community, dead for 16 years. And her mother knew. Her mother always knew and never said a word. Hot tears streamed down her face as fragments of memories began to rearrange themselves in her mind. The rush with which they had left Mount Promise, the way her mother kept looking back as they drove away from the community. The nightmares that had haunted her for years, now it all made sense. But there was something even more disturbing in the letter. The strange letters her mother had received. Marina ran to Celia's room, rummaging through drawers and closets until she found a wooden box hidden in the back of the wardrobe. Inside, there were 3 brown envelopes, no return address, stamped from different cities: Cuiabá, Goiânia, West Star. She opened the first one with trembling fingers. Inside was a black and white photograph. Her and Clara playing in the yard of Mount Promise, both 7 years old. On the back, a message written in shaky handwriting: "Children don't forget. Children always come home." The second envelope contained a rough map of the Mount Promise area, with a red X marked in the middle of the forest. Next to the X, 2 words: "They wait." The third envelope was sealed. Marina opened it with a racing heart. Inside, a small object wrapped in tissue paper and a note: "For Marina, from your old friend. We will meet soon." She unwrapped the tissue paper and felt the world spin. It was a small piece of purple fabric, the same fabric from the dress Clara wore the last day she saw her. Marina dropped the fabric and ran to the bathroom, vomiting violently. When she managed to compose herself, she stumbled back into the living room. Her mind struggled to process the information. Someone was sending these letters. Someone who knew about Clara, about Mount Promise, about her. Someone who had access to a piece of the dress Clara wore 16 years ago. She grabbed the phone and looked up the number for Antonio Silva in West Star. Her hands trembled so much that she had to dial 3 times before she could complete the call. Antonio Silva. "Mr. Silva, my name is Marina Castro. My mother was Celia Castro from Mount Promise." Silence on the other end of the line, then a heavy sigh. "I was expecting your call, girl. Your mother warned me you'd look me up one day. Can you come today? It's best we talk in person. And Marina, bring everything you found about that time. Everything." The drive to West Star would take 2 hours. Marina quickly packed a bag, put the envelopes and her mother's letter in a folder, and left mid-morning. Throughout the journey, her eyes darted between the road and the rearview mirror with the paranoid feeling of being followed. Every car that stayed behind her for more than a few kilometers made her heart race. West Star was an even smaller town than Clear Creek, with cobblestone streets and old houses that seemed frozen in time. Antonio's junkyard was on the edge of town, an area surrounded by rusty cars and scattered parts that created a labyrinth of metal and abandoned memories. Antonio was a man of about 50, with graying hair and hands calloused from decades of working with metal. His eyes, however, held a sadness that Marina recognized immediately. The same sadness she saw in the mirror since reading her mother's letter. "You have her eyes," he said as Marina got out of the car. "Your friend Clara's eyes. She had eyes like that, big and sad, even when she was little." Marina felt her legs weaken. "You knew Clara?" "More than that, girl. I watched her grow up, and I watched her die." Antonio took her into a small shed in the back of the junkyard. The walls were covered with old tools and faded photographs. On a table in the center, there was a metal crate that Marina immediately recognized. From the descriptions in the document she had found at home, it was the same crate mentioned in the story about Mount Promise that her mother had kept. In 2000, a customer brought a black Opala here. Said he found it abandoned on a farm. When I opened the trunk, I found this. Antonio tapped the crate with his knuckles, producing a hollow and sinister sound. Inside was a cult diary, photos and some other things. Marina approached the crate, feeling a strange chill emanating from the metal. "What else?" Antonio hesitated. "Marina, are you sure you want to know? Some truths are too heavy to bear." "I need to know. For Clara, for my mother, for me." Antonio nodded and opened the crate. The smell that rose was indescribable. A mixture of mildew, damp earth, and something sweet and sickening that Marina couldn't identify. Inside, carefully organized, were photographs, pages from a leather-bound diary, and a small object wrapped in black cloth. This was Jonas Duarte's diary. He recorded everything that happened in the community. Everything. Antonio handed the diary to Marina with hesitant hands. Marina opened it to the first page. The handwriting was small and angular, almost aggressive. The earliest entries dated back to 1978 and described the founding of Mount Promise as a place of spiritual purification and rebirth through discipline. As she turned the pages, the accounts grew darker. Detailed descriptions of punishment, rituals, forced fasts, the isolation of children who showed signs of impurity. She came to an entry dated March 1984. "Rosana Castro continues to question our sacred methods. Today, I found her talking to Celia about taking the children away. This rebellion cannot continue. The purity of the community is at risk." Clara shows the same questioning signs as her mother. Both need to be corrected before they contaminate the other children. Marina turned the page with trembling hands. April 15, 1984. Purification will be necessary. Rosana and Clara will be taken to the sacred circle on the new moon. The ritual must be complete so that their souls find peace and so that the others learn about obedience. Celia will be spared if she promises eternal silence. Children are always more receptive to learning when they see the consequences of disobedience. "My God," Marina whispered, feeling nausea rise in her throat. "Keep reading," Antonio said softly. "You need to see everything." The next entry was dated April 20th, 1984, 5 days later. The ritual was interrupted. Rosana and Clara managed to escape during the preparations. I organized search teams throughout the forest. They cannot go far. Clara was injured during the escape. She won't be able to walk for long. When we find them, the example will be even more powerful. April 21. We found Rosana and Clara in the swamp, 3 kilometers from the community. Rosana had built a makeshift shelter with branches and leaves, but the previous night's rain had soaked everything. Clara had a high fever. Both were brought back for final purification. The ritual will take place tomorrow at dawn. Celia tried to interfere but was restrained. She must witness to understand the seriousness of obedience. Marina stopped reading, tears falling onto the yellowed pages. He killed them. He really killed them. Read the last entry, Antonio insisted. April 22nd, 1984. The ritual was completed. Roxana remained strong until the end, protecting Clara with her own body. Clara was just a child. Her eyes, I will never forget her eyes. They were buried in the sacred circle, according to ancient traditions. Their souls are now purified. Celia fainted during the ceremony. When she woke up, I informed her that any mention of the event would result in the same purification for her and her daughter Marina. She understood. Some lessons are only learned through absolute fear. Marina slammed the diary shut, sobbing. Antonio gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "There's more, Marina." He picked up the object wrapped in black cloth and placed it in her hands. Jonas kept this as a trophy. With trembling hands, Marina unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small rag doll with curly wool hair and a tiny purple dress. It was Clara's doll. Marina remembered it perfectly. Clara took the doll everywhere, talked to it at night when they were scared, shared with it the few sweets they managed to hide. But something was wrong with the doll. Its eyes had been sewn shut with copper thread, and in place of its mouth was a small embroidered red X. "Why did he keep this?" Marina asked, clutching the doll to her chest. "Read this." Antonio showed a final page of the diary, written in different ink, more recent. 2019. They did not rest. Roxana and Clara did not find peace. I see them in the forest, walking among the trees, searching for something, for someone. They want Marina. They want to complete the circle. The ritual was not enough. The purification was incomplete. Marina must return. Marina must come home. "This was written last year," Antonio said. "Jonas is still alive, Marina, and he's looking for you." Marina felt the world spin around her. "How do you know that?" "Because he was here. 3 months ago, shortly before your mother died. An old, thin man with eyes that looked like 2 black holes. He wanted the chest back. He said there were things inside that belonged to him. When I refused, he threatened you and your mother directly. That's when I called Celia and warned her. Her accident. It wasn't an accident, Marina. Your mother was leaving town when the car flipped. She was running away again, trying to protect you again." Marina hugged Clara's doll tighter, feeling as if the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. Her mother had died trying to protect her. Clara and Roxana had died for questioning a madman, and now that same madman was hunting her. "Where is he?" she asked. "Nobody knows for sure, but there are rumors. Some hunters say they've seen smoke rising from the ruins of Mount Promise. Others speak of strange chants coming from the forest during the new moons." Antonio paused, studying Marina's face. "You're not thinking of going there, are you?" Marina looked at the doll in her hands, at the open diary on the table, at the scattered photographs showing smiling faces of people who trusted the wrong man. Clara had died at 7, terrified and far from home. Roxana had died trying to protect her daughter. Her mother had died carrying secrets and guilt for 16 years. "I have to go," she said. "It's the only way to end this." "Marina, you don't understand. Jonas isn't just a disturbed man. What he did in that cult, the rituals he performed, there was something supernatural involved, something that shouldn't exist. After I found that chest, strange things started happening in town. Children saying they see a girl in a purple dress playing in backyards at night. Adults dreaming of chants in languages they don't recognize. Dead animals appearing arranged in perfect circles." Marina stood up, putting the doll in her bag. "Then all the more reason to end this. He can't keep hurting people. You can't go alone. I won't go alone." Marina lightly touched the doll through the fabric of her bag. "Clara's coming with me." The woods surrounding the ruins of Mount Promise had changed in the 16 years since Marina had last been there. The trees seemed taller, denser, as if they had grown to hide secrets. The path she vaguely remembered had been almost completely swallowed by vegetation, forcing her to push her way through low branches and thorny bushes that tore at her clothes and scratched her skin. It was almost 4 in the afternoon when she left her car on the dirt road and entered the woods. Antonio had insisted she take a flashlight, a machete, and her cell phone, although he doubted there would be a signal in the area. He had also given her a rough map he had drawn himself based on descriptions from Jonas's diary, marking where the sacred circle and the community ruins were likely located. As she walked, Marina began to recognize elements of the landscape that had remained, buried in her childhood memory. A peculiarly shaped tree, a stream that made a specific curve, a rock formation that looked like a face from a certain angle. Each recognition brought with it a wave of nostalgia mixed with terror. The smell of the woods was exactly as she remembered. A damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else she had never been able to identify. Now, with an adult mind, she recognized what it was: the smell of fear. As if the forest itself held the memory of the horrors that had happened there. After an hour of walking, Marina reached a clearing where she immediately recognized the ruins of Mount Promise. The main buildings had partially collapsed, covered in vines and moss. But the basic structure was still there. The main hall, where the meetings took place, the communal dormitories, the community kitchen, and in the center of the clearing, untouched by time, the stone circle where the rituals took place. Marina slowly approached the circle, her heart beating so hard she could hear the sound in her ears. The stones were larger than she remembered, some over 3 feet tall, arranged in a specific pattern that created strange shadows even in the sunlight. In the center of the circle, the earth was darker, as if something had been spilled there repeatedly over the years. That's when she saw the smoke. A thin column of gray smoke rose from somewhere behind the main ruins. Someone was there. Marina felt a shiver run down her spine, but she couldn't turn back. Not now. She carefully circled the ruins, following the smoke. Behind what was once the women's dormitory, she found a structure she didn't remember. A small cabin made of wood and stone, with a primitive chimney from which the smoke emerged. The structure seemed newer than the others, probably built after the community was officially dissolved. Marina hid behind a large tree, observing the cabin. There were no windows on the walls she could see, only a heavy wooden door. Next to the door, hanging on rustic hooks, were objects that made Marina's blood run cold. Rag dolls, at least a dozen of them, all with stitched eyes and mouths marked with a red X. One of the dolls was identical to the one she carried in her bag. The cabin door creaked open, and Marina had to bite her own hand to keep from screaming. The man who came out was tall and thin, with long white hair and an unkempt beard. His eyes were exactly as Antonio had described, 2 black holes that seemed to absorb the light around them. Jonas Duarte had aged, but his presence still emanated the same terror that Marina remembered from childhood. Jonas moved across the clearing with slow but determined steps, carrying a metal bucket. Marina followed him with her eyes as he went to the stone circle. There, he poured the contents of the bucket, a dark liquid she preferred not to identify, onto the already stained earth in the center of the circle. Then he did something that stopped Marina's heart. He raised his arms to the sky and began to sing. The melody was the same one she remembered from the ceremonies of her childhood, but the words were different, darker, more urgent. Marina, lost daughter, hear my call. Clara awaits you in the sacred circle. Rosanna calls you home. The ritual must be complete. The purification must be eternal. Marina felt her legs weaken. He knew she was there. Somehow Jonas knew she had arrived. You can hide behind the trees, girl, but I feel your presence, just as I feel theirs. Rosanna and Clara never truly left. They are trapped here, waiting for you, waiting for the circle to be closed. Marina forced herself to breathe slowly, trying to control the panic. She needed to get out of there. She needed to run to the car and leave, call the police, do anything. But stay there listening to that madman's words. But when she tried to move, she realized she couldn't. Her feet felt rooted to the ground, as if invisible vines had sprung up and bound her there. She looked down and saw her legs trembling violently, but she couldn't take a single step. "You feel it, don't you?" Jonas continued, now turning towards her exact hiding spot. "You feel them calling you. Clara wants to show you the new doll I made for her. Rosanna wants to hug you like she used to when you were little. They miss you, Marina. They miss you very, very much." That's when Marina saw the figures. At first, it was just movement on the periphery of her vision, like shadows shifting between the trees. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she began to distinguish more defined shapes. A tall woman with dark hair, wearing a white dress soiled with dirt. Beside her, a smaller figure with curly hair and a ragged purple dress. Rosanna and Clara. But something was wrong with them. Their skin was too pale, almost translucent. Their eyes were completely black, like bottomless pits, and when they moved, they made no sound. They glided across the ground as if weightless. Clara waved to Marina, a forced smile stretching her pale lips. In her free hand, she held a doll identical to the ones hanging in Jonas's cabin. "Come play with me, Marina." Clara's voice echoed in Marina's head, but her lips didn't move. "We have so much to talk about. So many things that happened after you left." Marina tried to scream, but no sound came from her throat. The figures approached slowly, and she could see details that made her feel nauseous. Rosanna and Clara's clothes were covered in dirt and dark stains. There were marks on their necks, marks that exactly matched the descriptions of the purification rituals in Jonas's diary. "My dear Marina," Rosanna's voice whispered in her mind, "you've grown so much, but you're still our special girl, aren't you? You're still Clara's best friend. You still want to play with us." Jonas continued to chant in the stone circle, his voice growing louder and more frantic. The dolls hanging in his cabin began to sway on their own, as if an invisible breeze were moving them. But there was no wind. The air was completely still. "The ritual began 16 years ago," Jonas shouted, "but it was never completed. Rosanna and Clara were purified, but the circle remained open. Marina must complete what was started. 3 souls, 3 purifications, 3 offerings to the sacred." Marina finally managed to move, but her legs felt like lead. Each step was a struggle against an invisible force that tried to keep her in place. The figures of Rosanna and Clara continued to approach, their movements fluid and unnatural, as if they were floating a few inches above the ground. "Don't run from us, Marina," Clara whispered, her voice echoing directly into Marina's brain. "You were always our best friend. Remember how we played house? How we shared secrets? How we promised we'd always be together?" Marina tripped over a root and fell to her knees, scraping her palms on the rough stones. When she looked up, Clara was only a few feet away. Her childhood friend looked exactly as Marina remembered, except for the empty eyes and the skin that glowed with an unhealthy light. "I missed you all these years," Clara continued, extending a pale hand toward Marina. "I missed our conversations, our games. Mommy and I were so alone here for so long, so alone. But now you're home." Marina forced herself to stand, slowly backing away. Her hand automatically found her purse, touching Clara's doll she'd carried since morning. The contact with the physical object seemed to partially break the trance she was in. "You're not real," she said aloud, trying to convince herself as much as the apparitions. "Clara is dead. Rosanna is dead. You're just what, Marina?" Rosanna appeared on the other side, surrounding her. "Just memories? Just guilt?" Just the weight of what your mother carried all these years? The woman's voice was filled with sadness and anger. Celia saw us die, Marina. She saw Jonas cut us, burn us, bury us, and she did nothing but grab you and run away. She was protecting her daughter, Marina shouted, finding her voice. She was just a woman alone against a lunatic. And we were just a mother and a child alone against the same lunatic, Rosanna retorted, her black eyes gleaming with a cold light. But we were abandoned, left to die while you escaped to a safe life. Jonas had stopped chanting and was now walking toward the group, carrying something that gleamed in the fading light. A ceremonial knife with an ornate handle and a curved blade. The same knife described in the diary, used in the purification rituals. Finally, we are reunited, he said, his voice hoarse but still carrying authority. The complete, spiritual family, Rosanna, Clara, and our dear Marina, the circle can be closed. The purification can be completed. Marina backed further, but felt her back touch the trunk of a thick tree. She was cornered between Jonas and the apparitions of her friend and her mother. Her breath was short, her heart beating so fast she could feel the pulse in her temples. 16 years of waiting, Jonas continued, approaching slowly. 16 years of planning, 16 years of perfecting the rituals. Rosanna and Clara taught me so much during all this time. They showed me how the veil between the worlds can be torn, how death can be just a door to a higher state of existence. You're a murderer, Marina said, trying to keep her voice steady. A crazy murderer who hides behind invented rituals. Jonas chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Made up? Marina, my dear child, you don't understand the magnitude of what happens here. These rituals weren't invented by me. They were revealed to me by Rosanna and Clara themselves after they crossed over. They taught me how to maintain communication, how to preserve their essence on this plane. They showed me that physical death is only the first step of a greater transformation. Clara moved closer to Marina, extending her hand again. It's true, Marina. Death isn't the end. It's just different, colder, lonelier. But with you here, we won't have to be alone anymore. Marina looked at her dead friend's outstretched hand. The skin was chalk white, with blue veins visible beneath the surface. The fingers were too long, as if the bones had continued growing after death. I'm not going to let you take me, Marina said, her voice gaining strength. Clara, you were my best friend. You would never hurt me. And Rosanna, you loved your daughter. You can't want this for me. Clara and Rosanna's expression shifted subtly. For a moment, something like recognition flickered in Clara's vacant eyes. She lowered her hand, looking confused at Marina. Marina? Clara's voice sounded different, weaker, more distant. Marina, where are we? I can't remember how we got here. It was so cold and then... Clara, no! Jonas shouted, raising his knife. Don't let her confuse you. You know your mission. You know what needs to be done. But something had shifted in the dynamic. Clara looked around the clearing as if seeing everything for the first time. Rosanna also seemed confused, touching her own face with trembling fingers. My daughter, Rosanna whispered, looking at Clara. My little Clara, what have they done to you? What have they done to us? Marina realized she had a chance. Slowly, she pulled the doll from Clara's bag, holding it where both apparitions could see. Clara, remember this doll. You called her Hope. You said she held all your happy dreams, your dreams of growing up, of being a teacher, of having a family. Do you remember? Clara stared at the doll, and tears, impossible tears from someone, dead for 16 years, began to stream down her pale face. Hope, she whispered. I remember holding her when I was scared, when the grown-ups yelled, when Mommy cried. She looked at Marina with eyes that, for a moment, regained their color. Marina, I'm dead, aren't I? You are. Marina said softly, tears also streaming down her face. But you shouldn't be trapped here. You should be at peace. Enough! Jonas roared, charging towards Marina with the knife raised. You won't destroy 16 years of work. You won't break the bond that keeps them here. Marina rolled aside at the last second, and Jonas's knife plunged deep into the tree trunk. As he struggled to pull the blade from the wood, Marina ran towards the stone circle. Clara, Rosanna, she yelled. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to serve him. You can leave. We can't, Rosanna said, her voice heavy with sadness. He bound us here, with rituals, with symbols, with parts of our bodies that he kept. As long as he has these ties, we can't leave. Marina looked at Jonas's cabin, at the dolls hanging outside. She understood immediately. The dolls weren't just representations. They contained physical parts of Clara and Rosanna. Hair, perhaps pieces of skin or bone. Elements Jonas had taken from their bodies during the rituals and used to keep their souls tethered to the physical plane. Jonas finally managed to pull the knife from the tree and turned to her, his face contorted with rage. You understand nothing, stupid girl. They want to stay. They chose me as their guardian. They showed me secrets no living person should know. They didn't choose anything, Marina yelled back. You forced them to stay. You enslaved them even after death. Marina ran towards the cabin, Jonas a few feet behind her. She reached the hanging dolls and began ripping them from their hooks, throwing them to the ground. Immediately she sensed a shift in the air. The figures of Clara and Rosanna seemed to become more solid, more real. What are you doing? Jonas yelled, more panic than rage in his voice now. Marina picked up the first doll and tore it in half. Brown hair, Clara's hair, spilled out mixed with other objects she preferred not to identify. The moment the hair touched the ground, Clara cried out, not a cry of pain, but of relief. Marina, Clara exclaimed, her voice now clear and real. I can remember everything. What he did, how we were killed, how he trapped us here. She looked at Jonas with pure hatred. 16 years, forced to serve him, forced to lure. Others here. How many people did you bring to be sacrificed? Jonas tried to reach Marina, but Rosanna materialized between them, now solid enough to push him back with supernatural force. Many, Rosanna said, answering Clara's question. I remember now, lost travelers, curious teenagers, people searching for missing relatives, all brought to the circle, all sacrificed to keep the rituals going. Marina continued destroying the sea dolls one by one. Each destroyed doll made Clara and Rosanna more solid, more real, more themselves. It also released other presences. Marina began to see other figures in the clearing, people she didn't recognize, Jonas's victims over the years. You don't know what you're doing, Jonas yelled, lunging for the remaining dolls. Without the rituals, without the bonds, they'll return to the world of the living. They'll spread death wherever they go. Lie, a new voice said. Marina turned to see her mother Celia materialize near the stone circle. Unlike the other apparitions, Celia seemed at peace, bathed in a soft light. My dear Marina, you did the right thing. They didn't want to stay. They wanted to leave to find rest. Mom, Marina whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm proud of you, Celia said. You did what I didn't have the courage to do. You faced the monster. You freed his victims. Jonas made one last desperate attempt to reach Marina, but Clara and Rosanna stepped in his way. Now, completely solid and free from his control, they were stronger than him. Your rituals are over, Clara said, her voice carrying an authority she hadn't possessed as a child. Your power over us is over, and your life is too. Clara, no, Marina said. Don't become like him. Don't become murderers. Clara looked at Marina, and for a moment she was again the 7-year-old girl Marina remembered. You're right, we're not like him. She turned to Jonas. But you will pay for what you did, just not by our hands. The ground began to tremble. The stones of the sacred circle began to move on their own, shifting from their positions and rolling. Toward Jonas, the earth itself seemed to be rejecting his presence. "What's happening?" Marina cried. "The place is purifying itself," Rosanna explained. "Mount Promise was built on a very ancient sacred site. The land was contaminated by Jonas's rituals, but now that the trapped souls have been freed, it can cleanse itself." The trees surrounding the clearing began to lean in, as if they were going to bend and crush everything in the center. The air itself seemed to be sucked into a central point, creating an invisible vortex. "Marina, you need to get out of here," Celia said urgently. "Now! And you? Clara, Rosanna, will you be all right?" Clara smiled, the same sweet smile Marina remembered from childhood. "We're going where we should have gone 16 years ago. We're going to find peace." "Thank you, Marina," Rosanna said, "for freeing us, for being brave when we couldn't be." Marina looked one last time at her childhood friend. "I never forgot you, Clara. I never stopped missing you." "I know," Clara replied, "and now you can stop carrying that pain. You can live your life without the weight of guilt, without the weight of secrets." Marina nodded, picked up Clara's original doll, the only one left intact, and ran toward the forest. Behind her, she could hear Jonas screaming as the earth itself closed over him. She didn't look back. She ran through the forest in the dark, guided only by the light of her flashlight and the memory of the path. Branches tore at her clothes, rocks cut her feet, but she didn't stop. She only slowed down when she saw the lights of her car in the distance. When she finally reached the road, Marina turned to look back at the forest one last time. A soft light glowed among the trees. Not the cold, artificial light of Jonas's rituals, but something warm and welcoming. For a moment, she thought. She saw two figures walking together toward the light, a woman and a young girl, hand in hand. Then the light faded, and the forest was just a forest again. Marina got into the car with trembling hands and drove back to West Star. Antonio was waiting for her, sitting on the porch of his house with a cup of coffee. "Is it over?" he asked as she got out of the car. "It's over," Marina confirmed. "And Jonas?" Marina looked back toward the forest. "He won't bother anyone anymore." Antonio nodded, asking for no more details. Some things were better left unexplained. 3 days later, Marina was back in Clear Creek, packing up her mother's last belongings. The house felt different now, lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. She had decided to sell the property and use the money to start a new life elsewhere. Perhaps by the coast, where she could hear the sound of the ocean instead, of the echoes of the past. She was packing Celia's books when she found one last surprise, a letter addressed to her, hidden between the pages of an old novel. The handwriting was different from the first letter, more hurried, as if it had been written in haste. "Marina, if you're reading this, it means you found the courage to do what I never could. It means you freed Clara and Rosanna from the nightmare they lived through for so many years. I know you must be angry with me for keeping the secrets, for running away, for not being brave enough to confront Jonas when there was still time. You have a right to that anger. I failed as a mother that night, and I failed as a human being. But I want you to know that every day for the past 16 years, I carried the weight of what I did and what I didn't do. Every nightmare you had as a child was a reminder of my cowardice. Every time you asked about Clara, my heart broke a little more. I hope that one day you can forgive me, but more importantly, I hope you can forgive yourself. You were just a child. None of what happened was your fault. Live your life, my dear daughter. Live for the dreams Clara could never fulfill. Live for the mother Rosanna could never be for her. Live for all of us, with all my love and eternal. Regret, Celia P.S. The doll Clara made. Keep it, not as a reminder of the tragedy, but as a symbol that true love transcends even death. Clara made it for you when you were children, a parting gift. Even at 7, she knew you'd be separated. But she wanted you to know she'd always be your friend, no matter what. Marina carefully folded the letter and kept it with Clara's doll. Her mother was right. She would keep the doll not as a symbol of sorrow, but as a reminder of the love and friendship that not even death had managed to destroy. 6 months later, Marina was living in a small coastal town, working as a teacher at a local school. She had made new friends, started a new life, learned to sleep without nightmares. Clara's doll sat on a shelf in her room, not hidden away like a dark secret, but displayed as a treasured keepsake. Sometimes, especially during full moon nights, Marina thought she could hear the distant sound of children playing. It wasn't a haunted or sad sound, but joyful, as it should be. It was the sound of Clara finally free to play, free to dream, free to be the child she never had a chance to be. And Marina smiled, knowing her friend had finally found the peace she deserved. The circle had been closed, not with dark rituals and bloody sacrifices, but with love, courage, and the power of forgiveness. The shadows of the past had finally been illuminated by the light of truth. And for the first time in 16 years, Marina Castro slept in complete peace.